I can only imagine, let's say SARS says you owe that 100,000 Rand and then it's 150% being added on top of that. You now owe them,
Mm.
250, 300,000. It just escalates uncontrollably. But how exactly does SARS actually know what it is that you've earned on a worldwide basis? Do they use any sort of tools or the reporting requirements? How do they know? Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Junaid Baila. I'm a tax attorney here at Tax Consulting South Africa. And today I'm joined by my esteemed colleague, Alex Mavundla, who is a tax compliance specialist as well as a registered tax practitioner. Today we're going to be discussing the hidden dangers which expats face with
Mm.
regards to their declaration of income here in South Africa. Alex, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Janet, for the invite.
Absolutely. Alex, I think perhaps as a starting point, if you could just unpack for us what exactly is tax residency, and what are the common misconceptions and pitfalls which you see expats facing?
Mm. Mm. A tax residency in South Africa obviously runs into two tests, physical present test, and the other one is the ordinarily um, test. And the ordinary test then based on intentions. Um, someone who living abroad on permanent basis, and the intention is to remain there until for foreseeable future. And then physical present test will then calculate the days that you have spent here in South Africa. That will be 91 days in the current year, and then over the previous 5 years will be 958 days.
Okay.
Yeah,
And, once that test has actually then given you a result,
yeah,
and you're either resident or you're non-resident,
yeah.
what errors do you see expats actually making when declaring their income and so on?
Um, I would give you an example for someone maybe who's been abroad for a long time. So what they normally do here, they've not been back in South Africa for such a long time. When they submit a tax return, they often submit a nil tax return. In a situation whereby they have not actually formally ceased their tax residency, but they're still not declaring that foreign earned income, which they were supposed to because they were not formally immigrated or formally ceased their tax residency.
Okay, and of course, I'd imagine there's a lot of
Mm.
repercussion to that under declaration or a null return where, of course, it wasn't factually null.
Yeah.
What are the possible consequences for that error being made by taxpayers?
Obviously, SARS might impose penalties in terms of for under declaring your income, and that's then result in a huge tax liability, and obviously criminal sanctions were applicable.
Absolutely, there's definitely that risk for non-compliance with the Tax
Yes,
Act.
that's correct.
In terms of the penalties,
Mm.
is it a one size fits all, or are there different penalties that are imposed depending on?
Yeah, all depends on the behavior.
Okay.
So it can range from it's basically range from 10 to 150. Obviously, within that, depending on the type of behavior that was committed by the taxpayer. In a case whereby it was carelessness or negligence or tax evasion, and this can then go up to 150%, meaning it's on the tax liability that you were supposed to pay SARS. And then it result in that, and it's going to be a huge tax liability on a taxpayer, and then you have consequences, and then you just need to reach out to the relevant tax individual to assist you.
Absolutely. And I can only imagine, let's say SARS says you owe that 100,000 Rand and then it's 150% being added on top of that. You now owe them,
Mm.
250, 300,000. It just escalates uncontrollably. But how exactly does SARS actually know what it is that you've earned on a worldwide basis? Do they use any sort of tools or the reporting requirements? How do they know?
I mean, now we live in a world of technology. This AI, they can also obtain information, third party data, and this can be your banking institute where they can see all the transactions that you received in your bank account. Okay, then it can be foreign because they need to report with the common reporting standard with other countries. In a situation where you find yourself that you're not declaring that income, you find yourself in SARS hot waters whereby there's a huge tax liability that you need to pay, and then you just need to ensure that it is correctly done going forward.
Okay. And with that being said, and people already facing these liabilities,
Mm.
what can be done to actually help expats who've already fallen into this trap, and maybe
Mm.
they've earned money abroad but they didn't declare it here in South Africa? What relief mechanisms are actually available?
I mean, there are different ones. It's either obviously depending whether the tax return was selected for that verification or audit. Is either you can do it via the voluntary disclosure program, which is VDP, and it's either you can object on that tax return that is flagged or audited by SARS, or you can either formally seize for someone who's left South Africa on permanent basis, and then SARS is now saying please come and declare this foreign income. When we formally seize, obviously, we backdate your FE process or your cessation to the time you actually left South Africa. And then that then covers your foreign employment.
Okay, perfect. And in terms of formally ceasing your
Yes.
tax residency, um, perhaps if you could just unpack what that fully entails in the sense of what are the implications, and why would an expert hand be needed to actually facilitate this?
Yeah. And then formally seizing the benefit, I will start with the benefit.
Hmm.
The benefit is that the income that you earn abroad can be through investment, foreign employment, is then not be declared in your tax return here in South Africa. You only declared your local source income. And some of the either maybe implications or rather maybe the disadvantage will then be that you need to do a DMCGT calculation when you formally cease, but only applies for certain assets that have DMCGT implications, like your shares. It can be a foreign property that you obtained before exit.
Okay, perfect. And I suppose, the key takeaway here then is that, the cost of that inaction
Yeah.
can very easily exceed any short-term relief. You
Yes.
underdeclare now, but there's the risk, number one, of criminal sanctions, and of course then penalties
Mm,
being imposed for that as well.
mm.
I think the recommendation then would be to reach out if you do need to cease your tax residency, to actually reach out for assistance from people such as Alex, who are well experienced in this regard and can actually assist to get that formal cessation letter. All right. Well, thank you so much for sharing your insights and for joining us today, Alex. I really
Mm.
appreciate it, and I'm sure our viewers do as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Janet. Cheers. Cheers.
Thanks.